The first time I saw Marcus Kane fail a combat simulation, I laughed so hard that bioluminescent tears leaked from my optical membranes. The human had managed to crash his fighter craft into the launch bay, before even leaving the hangar. Not during takeoff, mind you. He literally reversed thrust while stationary and punched a hole through 3 reinforced bulkheads. "How?" Commander Thraxinine hissed through his breathing slits, his mandibles clicking in what I'd learned was suppressed rage. "How does someone fail to engage forward propulsion?" Marcus crawled out of the wreckage, brushing plasma dust from his uniform, and had the audacity to grin. "Well, sir, I figured if I'm going to fail, might as well make it memorable. I am Zara 14, Senior Combat Analyst for the Galactic Defense Academy, and in my 4 centuries of service, I had never encountered a specimen quite like this particular human. The Academy's records showed he had applied 17 times, been rejected 16, and somehow slipped through administrative cracks on attempt number 17 due to what could only be described as bureaucratic incompetence. His test scores were legendary, for all the wrong reasons. Tactical analysis, 12%. Weapon systems, 8%. Navigation, -4%. Yes, negative. He had somehow answered questions so incorrectly that he scored below 0, which our testing algorithms hadn't even considered possible. "Why do you keep trying?" I asked him, after his 5th consecutive failure in basic marksmanship. He had managed to shoot backwards and nearly killed Instructor Valk Prime. "Your species has proven capable warriors. Look at Rebecca Torres or David Chen or Sarah Williams. They excel in everything. You, well..." Marcus reloaded his pulse rifle with practiced ease, though I noticed his grip was all wrong. Because Zara 14, everyone expects humans to be natural-born killers, perfect soldiers. But what happens when you are not? What happens when you are just human? The way he said it made my secondary heart skip a beat. There was something in his voice, a note that didn't match his perpetual failures. Besides, he continued, raising the weapon and somehow managing to hit 3 wrong targets simultaneously. Failing is just another way of learning what doesn't work. "That's actually profound," I admitted grudgingly. "Yeah, I read that in a fortune cookie once." The Academy's corridors buzzed with gossip about the human who couldn't hit water if he fell out of a starship. Other cadets would place bets on how spectacularly Marcus would fail each day's challenges. The current record holder was his attempt at stealth infiltration, where he had triggered every alarm in the facility while somehow remaining completely invisible to all sensors. To this day, nobody understands how that was physically possible. But I watched him. I watched him because my job was analyzing combat patterns, and Marcus Kane was the most confusing pattern I'd ever encountered. He studied harder than anyone, spent nights in the simulation pods, asked questions that made instructors pause and think, and yet, Cadet Kane, Instructor Dracate, roared during advanced strategy class. "Explain how you would handle a 3-front assault with limited resources." Marcus stood, swaying slightly on his feet. He'd been in the Sims for 18 straight hours again. "Sir, I would surrender immediately." The class erupted in laughter. Even I couldn't suppress a chromatic flicker of amusement. "Surrender?" Draxate's vocal cords vibrated with disgust. "Your species conquered half the galaxy, and you would surrender?" "Well, sir, if I'm facing a 3-front assault with limited resources, the enemy clearly has superior numbers, position, and firepower. Surrendering saves lives, preserves resources for future operations, and gives me time to analyze their tactics while appearing defeated." Marcus scratched his head, messing up his already disheveled hair. "Plus, humans are really good at escaping from prisoner camps. Like, historically speaking, it's kind of our thing." The laughter died. Dracate's face cycled through several colors before settling on a disturbing shade of purple. "Elaborate, Cadet." "Oh, well, see, if they capture me, they think they have won. They relax security, get comfortable. Meanwhile, I'm learning their routines, their technology, their weaknesses. Then, when they least expect it," Marcus shrugged. "Boom. Prison break. And now I know everything I need to turn those 3 fronts into 3 vulnerabilities." For the first time in months, nobody laughed. "Interesting," Drax said slowly. "And how would you execute this theoretical escape?" "I wouldn't," Marcus replied cheerfully. I'd convince my fellow prisoners to do it for me. Humans are social creatures, sir. We specialize in making friends, building alliances, inspiring others to take risks they never would have considered alone. By the time I'm ready to leave, I will have an army of converts who think the escape was their idea. I felt something cold slide down my spine. Not fear, exactly, but recognition, like seeing a predator camouflaged so perfectly you only notice it when it moves. That night, I accessed Marcus's files again. Really looked at them this time. Not just his test scores, but his background. Born on an agricultural colony. Parents killed in an Xerathi raid when he was 12. Survived alone for 3 years before rescue teams found him. No formal military training. No advanced education. Just a stubborn refusal to quit applying to the academy. And those test scores, I ran them through probability matrices. The odds of failing so consistently, so spectacularly while clearly possessing above-average intelligence, astronomically small. Computer analyze pattern recognition in Cadet Kane's failures. Working analysis complete. Cadet Kane's failures follow no recognizable pattern. Each failure employs different methodologies and appears genuinely accidental. Computer, what is the probability that these failures are genuinely accidental? Working 0.003%. I stared at the screen, feeling my tertiary nervous system begin to tingle with anticipation. Either Marcus Kane was the unluckiest being in galactic history, or, computer, overlay Cadet Kane's failures with Academy security protocols, testing procedures, and classified training methodologies. Working, warning, requested analysis requires Level 7 clearance. Authorization Zara 14 Alpha Crimson. Working, analysis complete. Cadet Kane's failures have exposed 17 critical vulnerabilities in Academy systems, revealed 12 classified testing protocols, and mapped approximately 68% of the facility's security architecture. My mouth went dry. Computer, probability that this intelligence gathering was intentional. Working, 97.4%. I sat back in my chair, mind racing. Marcus Kane wasn't the Academy's greatest failure. He was its greatest spy. But working for whom, and why? The next morning I watched him stumble through basic combat maneuvers, somehow managing to trip over his own feet while simultaneously discovering that the training room's ventilation system connected directly to the command center. His accidental pulse blast had revealed a structural weakness that military engineers had overlooked for decades. Cadet Kane, I called after class. Walk with me. We strolled through the Academy's memorial gardens, past monuments honoring the greatest warriors in galactic history. Human names featured prominently among them, etched in crystalline monuments that caught the light of 3 suns. Beautiful day, Marcus said, stumbling over a decorative root and somehow taking detailed readings of the garden's security sensors as he caught himself. Indeed. Tell me, Cadet, what do you think of our memorial wall? Marcus studied the names, his expression growing serious for perhaps the first time since I'd known him. They died for something they believed in. That's worth something, isn't it? You sound like someone who's thought about dying. Haven't we all? He sat heavily on a bench, suddenly looking exhausted. My parents died believing the colonies were safe, believing the military would protect them. They were wrong. Is that why you are here? Revenge? Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Revenge? Against who? The Xerathi who killed them are dead. The commanders who failed to protect the colonies are retired. The system that allowed it to happen, that's still right here, training the next generation of warriors who will fail the next generation of innocents. So you are here to what? Reform the system from within? I'm here to understand it. Marcus turned to look at me directly, and for a moment the mask of incompetence slipped completely away. His eyes were sharp, calculating, and utterly focused. Every system has flaws. Zara 14. Every protocol has exceptions. Every security measure has blind spots. The only way to protect people is to know where the cracks are. And you have found quite a few cracks. Have I? The mask slipped back into place, and he was bumbling Marcus again. I wouldn't know. I'm just a guy who can't shoot straight. But I'd seen behind the mask now. And I realized that Marcus Kane wasn't just gathering intelligence about Academy systems. He was studying us, learning how we thought, how we fought, how we made decisions. He was mapping the entire Galactic Defense Force from the inside out. The question was why? Computer, I said that night alone in my quarters. Access historical records for Zarathi raids on human colonies. Cross-reference with Cadet Marcus Kane's family records. Working records accessed. Kane family confirmed killed in raid classification Delta 7 on agricultural colony Harvest Moon. Computer, access casualty reports for that raid. Working warning. Raid classification Delta 7 files are restricted. What level of restriction? Working, level 10. Command staff only. Level 10? For a simple colonial raid? I felt those cold tendrils down my spine again. Computer, how many human colonies have been classified as level 10 incidents? Working, 47 colonies over the past 23 years. Computer, how many of those colonies sent survivors to apply for Academy admission? Working, 137 survivors have applied. Acceptance rate 0%. How many applied multiple times? Working, 14 applicants applied more than 10 times. One applicant applied 17 times. Marcus Kane, the only survivor of a level 10 incident ever to gain admission to the Academy. And he'd done it by appearing so incompetent that nobody considered him a security risk. I was beginning to understand that Marcus Kane wasn't studying our military tactics to reform them. He was studying them to beat them. The next day brought the Academy's most challenging test, the Kobayashi Maru scenario. Every cadet faced it eventually, a no-win simulation designed to test character under impossible odds. Most failed honorably. Some found creative solutions. A rare few actually won through brilliant tactical innovation. Marcus Kane found a fourth option. Cadet Kane, report to Simulation Bay 7. The announcement echoed through the corridors. I made sure to position myself in the observation deck. Whatever was about to happen, I didn't want to miss it. The scenario began simply. Marcus commanded a single destroyer facing a massive enemy fleet, protecting a disabled civilian transport. Save the civilians, engage the enemy fleet, or retreat and preserve military assets. 3 choices, each with clear moral and tactical implications. Marcus chose none of them. Instead, he opened communication channels to both the enemy fleet and the civilian transport. But here's where it got interesting. He didn't speak to either of them. He connected their communications to each other, then sat back and waited. What is he doing? Commander Thrak 9 demanded from the observation deck. I'm not sure, admitted the simulation operator. On screen, the enemy fleet was demanding surrender from the civilian transport. The civilians were pleading for rescue, and Marcus was just listening. Then he did something unprecedented. He broadcast the entire conversation across all military frequencies, making sure every Academy instructor, every cadet, every staff member could hear the civilians begging for help while the enemy made increasingly brutal threats. This is against protocol, Thrak 9 hissed. He's supposed to make a tactical decision. Sir, Marcus's voice came through the comm system, calm and clear. I am making a tactical decision. I'm showing everyone exactly what we are fighting for. The simulation continued. The enemy fleet moved to attack the transport. Marcus's single destroyer was hopelessly outgunned. But something strange happened. The simulation began receiving incoming messages from other Academy ships requesting permission to join the scenario. That's not possible, the operator muttered. These are independent simulations. But it was happening. Somehow, Marcus had turned his no-win scenario into a recruitment drive. Cadets and instructors alike were volunteering their simulated ships to join his impossible mission. Sir, Marcus continued, the Academy teaches us that sometimes we face no-win scenarios. But it never teaches us that sometimes we don't have to face them alone. Within minutes, Marcus's single destroyer had become a fleet of 60 ships, all crewed by volunteers who had abandoned their own training exercises to join his impossible rescue mission. How did he access other simulations? I whispered. He didn't, the operator said, scanning his instruments frantically. He created a cascade failure in our isolation protocols. Every simulation in the Academy is now connected to his scenario. The battle was magnificent. 60 Academy ships against a simulated fleet of 200 enemy vessels, fighting to rescue a handful of civilian refugees. It should have been a slaughter, and it was, but not the way anyone expected. Marcus's volunteer fleet fought with desperate courage, using every dirty trick, every unconventional tactic, every piece of knowledge they'd gained from their training. They took horrible casualties, but they adapted, learned, evolved their strategy in real time, and they won. When the last enemy ship exploded in digital fire, the simulation bay erupted in cheers. 60 cadets and instructors had just experienced the most intense, most emotionally charged combat simulation in Academy history. They felt like heroes. Marcus Kane had just created 60 converts to his cause, whatever that cause might be. Cadet Kane. Thrak 9's voice was carefully controlled. Report for debriefing. Immediately. But Marcus was already gone. Somehow, in the chaos of the simulation's end, he had simply vanished. Security sensors showed him entering the simulation bay but never leaving. Find him, Thrak 9 ordered. They searched for 3 days. Marcus Kane had disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only his Academy uniform, neatly folded on his bunk, and a single datapad containing a message. Thank you for the education. Sorry about the graduation. Tell Zara 14 she was right about the fortune cookie. I made it up. I stared at the message, feeling the pieces click into place. Marcus Kane hadn't been gathering intelligence about Academy systems, he'd been recruiting. 60 of the Academy's best and brightest now shared an experience that bonded them to Marcus's vision of military service. They'd tasted victory achieved through cooperation, sacrifice, and absolute commitment to protecting civilians. They'd felt what it was like to be part of something larger than themselves, and they'd remember that feeling for the rest of their careers. Computer, I said quietly, access personnel files for all participants in the Kobayashi Maru Cascade event. Working, files accessed. Project their career trajectories based on current Academy performance metrics. Working, analysis complete. Projected assignments include fleet command, strategic planning, advanced weapons development, colonial defense, intelligence operations, and military training. Within 20 years, Marcus Kane's recruits would be scattered throughout the highest levels of military command. All of them carrying the memory of that impossible victory. All of them believing that sometimes the right thing to do was to break the rules. Computer, analysis of the cascade failure Marcus Kane created. How did he do it? Working, analysis indicates Cadet Kane introduced a viral protocol through 17 separate system vulnerabilities he had previously discovered through his training failures. Of course, every spectacular failure, every impossible accident, every bumbling mistake had been reconnaissance for this moment. Marcus Kane had spent months mapping every weakness in Academy security, not to steal information but to create a single moment of shared purpose that would reshape military culture from within. Computer, probability that Marcus Kane's true mission was recruitment rather than espionage. Working, based on available evidence. 98.7%. I laughed despite myself. The human had played us all perfectly. He'd appeared so incompetent that we never considered he might be competent at something entirely different. While we were watching for spies and saboteurs, he'd walked among us as a teacher. But the real question remained. What was he preparing his students for? The answer came 3 weeks later, when long-range sensors detected a massive Zarathi fleet moving toward the outer colonies. The same colonies where Marcus Kane's parents had died. The same colonies protected by graduates of the Academy. Colonies that would now be defended by 60 officers who believed that impossible odds were just another word for opportunity. As I watched the fleet deployments on the strategic display, I realized that Marcus Kane hadn't failed every test at the Academy. He'd been designing his own, and we were about to find out who passed. The Zarathi war fleet that appeared on our long-range sensors wasn't just massive, it was impossible. Computer, verify sensor readings. Commander Thrak 9 ordered, his voice tight with something I'd never heard from him before. Fear. Working. Sensors confirmed accurate. Zarathi fleet composition. 437 heavy cruisers, 89 dreadnoughts, 12 supercarriers, and 1 computer unable to classify final vessel. I stared at the tactical display, feeling my exoskeleton tingle with dread. The jury she hadn't fielded a fleet this size since the Great Expansion Wars, and that was before they developed their new plasma fusion technology. This wasn't a raid. This was an extermination force. Estimated target. Admiral Keth Prime asked. Working. Fleet trajectory indicates Sector 7 colonies. Primary target appears to be New Geneva system. New Geneva. Population 4.7 million humans, plus assorted alien civilians. Defended by. I checked the deployment records. 12 frigates and a single cruiser. It would be like using a knife to stop a meteor. Sir, I said, my voice catching slightly. New Geneva is where we just deployed 37 of the Kobayashi Maru participants. 3-9's mandibles clicked rapidly. The officers Kane recruited. Yes. So either this is the most unfortunate coincidence in galactic history, or Marcus Kane knew this was coming. I finished. The tactical display updated, showing our available forces. The nearest fleet was 6 days away. Our rapid response teams could reach New Geneva in 4 days. The Zarathi would be there in 2. Options? Admiral Keth Prime demanded. Sir, with respect, we don't have any, replied Fleet Tactical Analyst Brix 12. The colonists need to evacuate immediately. Any military response would be suicide. Evacuation takes 8 days minimum for a population that size, I pointed out. The Zarathi will be in system before we can save half of them. Then we save who we can and accept the losses, Cat Prime said grimly. That's when the first communication came through. Admiral, this is Captain Lisa Park, commanding New Geneva Defense Station. We are receiving your evacuation orders. Captain Park. I pulled up her file. One of Marcus's recruits from the Cascade simulation. Tactical score 93%. Leadership evaluation exceptional. Current assignment what should have been a quiet posting to a peaceful colony. Captain Park, begin immediate evacuation of all civilian populations. Fleet support is 4 days out. Sir, with respect, we have run the numbers. Standard evacuation protocols won't save even half the civilians before the Zarathi arrive. Then save who you can, Captain. That's an order. There was a long pause. Then, sir, we are not going to do that. Fredo 9's face went through 3 different shades of purple. Excuse me, Captain. We have been in contact with the other defense stations in the sector. All 37 commanders are in agreement. We are not abandoning these colonies. I felt a chill run through my tertiary nervous system. Marcus's recruits were acting as a unit, just like in the simulation. Captain, you have 12 frigates and a cruiser against a fleet of over 500 Zarathi warships. This isn't the Academy. This isn't a simulation. If you engage that fleet, you will all die. Maybe, sir. But we have been thinking about that simulation a lot lately. About what it means to face impossible odds for the right reasons. Admiral Keth Prime leaned forward. Captain Park, I'm ordering you to begin evacuation procedures immediately. Do not engage the Zarathi fleet under any circumstances. Sir, we understand your orders, but we are requesting permission to try something unconventional, such as, we want to implement the Kane Protocol. The Kane Protocol. Of course, Marcus had left them with a plan. Computer, search Academy databases for any reference to Kane Protocol. Working, no results found. Captain Park, I said, activating my communicator. This is Senior Analyst Zara 14. What exactly is the Kane Protocol? Analyst Zara. Good to hear your voice. Marcus left us detailed instructions before he disappeared. He said if a situation like this ever arose, we should remember that the real test isn't whether we can win, it's whether we are willing to try. That's not a protocol, Captain. That's philosophy. No, ma'am. It's both. Over the next 18 hours, we watched in fascination and horror as Marcus Kane's recruits implemented their impossible plan. It began with complete communication silence from all 37 defense stations. Then, one by one, their ships began moving, not retreating, not forming defensive positions, advancing. What are they doing? Thorak 9 demanded. They are moving toward the Zarathi fleet. Sir, I said, studying the tactical display, they are not moving randomly. Look at the pattern. The human ships were spreading out across 3 star systems, taking positions that made no tactical sense. They were isolated, vulnerable, and completely exposed. They are going to be slaughtered, Admiral Keth Prime said grimly. That's when the second phase began. This is Captain Park to all Colonial Defense Forces. The Kane Protocol is now active. All civilians are to implement Survival Plan Gamma immediately. Computer, what is Survival Plan Gamma? Working. No such protocol exists in military databases. But something was happening in the colonies. Long-range sensors showed massive civilian movement, but not toward evacuation points. They were moving toward underground facilities. Computer, scan new Geneva system for subterranean construction. Working. Scanning. Multiple underground installations detected. Architecture suggests recent construction. Purpose. Unknown. How recent? Working. Construction appears to have begun approximately 6 months ago. 6 months. Right around the time Marcus Kane first arrived at the Academy. He's been planning this for months, I whispered. Planning what? The Frac 9 demanded. Before I could answer, the Zarathi fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of New Geneva system. The sight of them was terrifying even through long-range sensors. Row upon row of massive warships, their hulls scarred from countless battles, their weapons arrays glowing with barely contained energy. This is War Master Krex Vol to human colony ships. The transmission crackled with static and menace. Surrender immediately or face complete annihilation. You have 1 standard hour. Captain Park's response was immediate. This is Captain Lisa Park, Colonial Defense Force. We decline your generous offer. You decline? The Zarathi commander's laughter was like grinding metal. Human, you face the Crimson Fleet. We have destroyed 1,000 worlds. Your handful of ships are nothing. Maybe. But you are forgetting something important, War Master. And what is that? We are not alone. That's when Marcus Kane revealed the true scope of his plan. The first sign was the communications chatter. Suddenly, our monitoring stations were picking up transmissions from across the sector. Not just military channels, but civilian frequencies, merchant vessels, even deep space mining operations. All ships. This is Captain David Torres aboard the merchant vessel Lucky Strike, proceeding to New Geneva system to assist Colonial Defense Forces. Mining Station Thedas 7 to New Geneva Defense. We are rigging our plasma extractors for combat deployment. ETA 6 hours. This is Captain Sarah Williams, aboard the passenger liner Starlight Express. We have dumped our cargo pods and armed our point defense systems. 300 civilian volunteers aboard, ready for action. One by one, ships began appearing on the tactical display. Not military vessels, but the entire infrastructure of human space. Cargo haulers retrofitted with missile pods, passenger liners converted to troop transports, mining ships carrying improvised weapons. How many ships are responding? Admiral Keth Prime asked, his voice hollow. Working. Current count over 3,000 vessels converging on New Geneva system. 3,000 ships crewed by civilians who had never seen combat, facing a professional war fleet that had conquered half the galaxy. It's still suicide, Frac 9 said. Those aren't warships. They are civilians with plasma cutters. Sir, I said slowly. I don't think Marcus Kane ever intended them to fight the Zarathi fleet directly. Then what? That's when the third phase began, and I finally understood what Marcus had been teaching his recruits during that simulation. The civilian ships weren't converging on the Zarathi fleet. They were surrounding it. 3,000 vessels spread across the system, creating a sphere of ships around the enemy formation. Not close enough to engage effectively, but close enough to be impossible to ignore. War Master, Captain Park's voice came through the comm channels. You said you have destroyed 1,000 worlds. But have you ever tried to destroy 1,000 worlds that were watching? What? Every ship out here is broadcasting, War Master. Live feeds to every human colony, every military base, every civilian station in known space. Right now, approximately 12 billion beings are watching this system. They are watching to see what the mighty Zarathi fleet does when faced with civilians willing to die for their homes. I felt my breathing slits constrict. Marcus Kane hadn't been teaching his students military tactics. He'd been teaching them psychological warfare. You think we care about witnesses, human? I think you care about your reputation. The Crimson Fleet is feared because you are seen as unstoppable. But what happens to that fear when 12 billion beings watch you struggle to defeat a handful of cargo haulers and mining ships? War Master Krex Vol's response was immediate and predictable. The Zarathi fleet opened fire. What followed was the most lopsided battle in galactic history. Zarathi plasma cannon tore through civilian ships like they were made of paper. Cargo haulers exploded in brilliant fireballs. Mining ships died trying to ram vessels 50 times their size. It should have been over in minutes. But it wasn't. Because every time a human ship died, 2 more appeared to take its place. The sphere of civilian vessels kept contracting, kept closing in, kept forcing the Zarathi to keep firing at targets that posed no real threat. And all across human space, billions of beings watched the Crimson Fleet burn ammunition and energy, killing defenseless civilians. "Sir," I said, monitoring the tactical display, "the Zarathi have expended approximately 40% of their ammunition reserves. Against cargo ships." "Yes, sir. And look at this." I highlighted energy readings from the Zarathi fleet. "Their weapons are overheating. They have been firing continuously for 3 hours. At defenseless targets," Admiral Keth Prime said, understanding beginning to dawn in his voice. "Marcus Kane turned those civilians into ammunition sinks." I realized, he's making the Zarathi waste their resources on targets that don't matter, but the human cost was horrific. Over 800 civilian ships had been destroyed, their crews vaporized by weapons designed to crack planetary crusts. The tactical display looked like a debris field. "This is insane," Thrax-9 said. "He's getting them all killed for nothing." "Is he?" I pulled up casualty reports. "Computer, analyze crew survival rates for destroyed civilian vessels." "Working? Analysis complete. Survival rate 87%. "What? That's impossible. We watched those ships explode." "Computer, explain survival rate calculation." "Working. Analysis indicates most civilian crews abandon ship immediately before weapon impact. Emergency beacon data suggests coordinated evacuation to nearby vessels." I stared at the data, feeling pieces click into place. They are not trying to fight the Zarathi. They are trying to waste their ammunition while preserving human lives. But why? That's when the 4th phase began, and Marcus Kane's true genius revealed itself. "This is Captain Park to War Master Krex Vol. How are your energy reserves holding up?" The Zarathi commander's response was pure rage. "We have power enough to glass a dozen worlds, human." "Good. Because you are going to need it." That's when the Colonial Defense Force finally engaged. 37 military vessels against a depleted Zarathi fleet that had been firing continuously for 4 hours. Ships with overheated weapons, drained power cores, and depleted ammunition reserves. The battle was still hopeless. But it was no longer impossible. Captain Park's cruiser led the charge, followed by 36 frigates crewed by officers who had learned to turn disadvantage into opportunity. They came at the Zarathi from all angles, using the debris field of civilian ships as cover, striking at overheated weapon systems and overtaxed power grids. "Incredible," Admiral Kith Prime breathed. "They are actually holding their own." More than holding their own, the human vessels fought with desperate precision, targeting the exact systems they knew would be most vulnerable after hours of continuous firing. They used every dirty trick Marcus had taught them, every unconventional tactic they'd learned in that Cascade simulation. But the Zarathi were still Zarathi, professional warriors with centuries of experience. As their initial shock wore off, they began to adapt to counter human tactics with their own innovations. The tide of battle was turning against the humans when Marcus Kane played his final card. "This is Admiral Rebecca Torres commanding the human relief fleet." The transmission crackled through space. "All Zarathi vessels, you are ordered to surrender immediately." I checked the long-range sensors, not believing what I was hearing. Their dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system was the largest human battle fleet ever assembled. Over 200 warships, including vessels I'd never seen before, experimental designs, prototype technologies. That's impossible, Thrak 9 said. The nearest human fleet was 6 days away. Computer, identify the lead vessel in the human fleet. Working vessel classification unknown. Hull signature suggests new construction. Designation, HDS, impossible odds. Of course it was. War Master Krixvool, Admiral Torres continued. You are facing the combined defense forces of 17 human colonies, supported by allied vessels from 12 different species. Your fleet is depleted, your weapons are overheated, and you are surrounded by hostile forces. This is your only chance to withdraw with honor. For a moment the system was silent except for the crackle of cooling weapon systems and the drift of debris from destroyed civilian ships. Then War Master Krixvool's reply came through. Human fleet, you fight well, but this engagement is not concluded. We withdraw for now. The Zarathi fleet began moving toward the edge of the system, their formation still disciplined despite their losses. But as they passed through the sphere of remaining civilian vessels, something unprecedented happened. The human crews began broadcasting, not threats or challenges, but something far more dangerous. Respect. Zarathi fleet, this is Captain James Murphy, merchant vessel Apollo's Dream. You fought with honor today. War Master Krixvool, this is mining station boss Elena Rodriguez. Your warriors showed courage facing impossible odds. Crimson Fleet, this is passenger liner coordinator Thomas Anderson. We look forward to meeting you again when the terms are more equal. I watched War Master Krixvool's bio-reading spike as he processed what was happening. The humans weren't gloating over their victory. They were acknowledging Zarathi's skill while making it clear they'd be ready for the next encounter. Humans, the War Master's voice carried grudging respect. You have given us much to consider. As the Zarathi fleet jumped to hyperspace, I finally understood what Marcus Kane had accomplished. He hadn't just saved New Geneva system, he'd changed the entire dynamic of human-Zarathi relations. Computer, analysis of this engagement's strategic implications. Working, analysis suggests significant shift in galactic power balance. Human capabilities have been reassessed by all monitoring species. Zarathi fleet reputation has been modified. Modified was an understatement. The mighty Crimson Fleet had been forced to retreat by a combination of civilian volunteers and military academy graduates. Every species in the galaxy would be recalculating their assumptions about human military capability. Sir, I said to Admiral Keth Prime, we need to debrief Captain Park and her officers immediately. Agreed. Captain Park, report to flagship for tactical analysis. Actually, Admiral, we won't be able to do that. Why not? Because we are resigning our commissions, sir. The silence on the bridge was deafening. All 37 of you? Yes, sir. Effective immediately. Captain, you just won the most important battle in recent human history. Why would you resign? Because this was never about winning battles. Admiral, this was about proving a point. And now that we have proved it, we have work to do. What work? Marcus Kane left us instructions, sir. Phase 5 of the Kane Protocol. Phase 5. Of course there was a Phase 5. Computer, scan the New Geneva system for any unusual energy signatures. Working, multiple signatures detected. Analysis suggests construction of large-scale industrial facilities. Purpose, unknown. Captain Park, I said, what exactly is Phase 5? Teaching, Analyst Zara. We are going to teach every human colony how to do what we just did. How to turn ordinary civilians into an unstoppable defense force. How to make any invasion so costly that it's not worth attempting. I felt the galaxy shift around me as I realized what Marcus Kane had truly accomplished. He hadn't just recruited 37 officers. He'd created the template for transforming human civilization itself. Admiral, I said quietly, I recommend we begin immediate tactical analysis of human defense capabilities across all sectors. Why? Because, sir, I believe we just witnessed the birth of a new kind of warfare, and Marcus Kane is teaching it to every human in the galaxy. As the debris field around New Geneva continued to glow with the heat of battle, I found myself wondering what other lessons Marcus Kane had prepared for his students, and what other tests he had designed for the rest of us. 6 months after the New Geneva incident, I found myself standing in the ruins of what used to be the most prestigious military academy in the galaxy, wondering how one human had managed to render our entire educational system obsolete. "The enrollment numbers are catastrophic," Admiral Keth Prime said, his voice echoing in the empty corridors where thousands of cadets once trained. "Down 93% across all species." "Sir," I replied, checking my datapad, "it's not just enrollment. Military academies throughout the galaxy are reporting the same phenomenon. Cadets are leaving mid-semester to join something called the Free Defense Network. And what exactly is this network? That, sir, is what we are here to find out." The answer was waiting for us in Conference Room Alpha, where Marcus Kane sat casually in a chair that had once been reserved for the Academy's highest-ranking officials. He looked exactly the same as when he'd disappeared 6 months ago, except for one critical difference: he wasn't pretending to be incompetent anymore. "Zora 14, he said with a genuine smile. "Glad you could make it. Admiral Keth Prime, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Mr. Kane," the Admiral's voice was carefully controlled, "you are technically still a deserter from this institution." "Actually, Admiral, I graduated. Top of my class, in fact, once you apply the correct grading criteria." Marcus gestured to the holographic display behind him, which showed tactical analyses of the New Geneva battle from 17 different perspectives. Every simulation concluded the same thing: the human strategy had been flawless. You see, the Academy has always graded students on how well they follow established protocols. But the real test isn't whether you can memorize the rulebook, it's whether you can rewrite it when the situation demands. "So you deliberately failed our test to prove a point?" I asked. "I failed your tests because your tests were designed to create followers, not leaders. Look around this room, Zara. How many of your graduates have ever innovated? How many have questioned doctrine? How many have won battles by doing something their textbooks said was impossible?" The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. "But that's not why you are here," Marcus continued. "You are here because you want to understand what the Free Defense Network is really about." "Enlighten us," Admiral Keth Prime said dryly. Marcus activated a new holographic display showing a three-dimensional map of human space. Hundreds of colonies were marked with pulsing blue lights, connected by networks of communication lines that formed complex patterns across the galaxy. Traditional military doctrine says you need centralized command, standardized equipment, and professional soldiers to defend territory effectively. The network proves that's wrong. How? By turning every civilian into a potential defender, every colony into a fortress, and every supply ship into a reconnaissance vessel. But more importantly, by making invasion economically impossible. Marcus zoomed in on one of the colony markers, revealing detailed schematics of underground facilities, civilian defense protocols, and interconnected communication networks. Take Harvest Station, for example. Population 50,000 farmers and miners. Traditional defenses none. Network defenses underground shelters for the entire population. Automated mining equipment converted to area denial weapons. And a civilian militia trained in asymmetric warfare. "That's guerrilla tactics," Admiral Keth Prime observed. "Nothing revolutionary about that." "You are right. The tactics aren't revolutionary. The economics are." Marcus brought up a cost analysis chart that made my secondary heart skip several beats. Computer simulation shows that conquering Harvest Station using traditional military force would require a minimum of 12 heavy cruisers, support vessels, and approximately 3 months of sustained bombardment. Total cost, roughly 4 billion credits. And the value of conquering Harvest Station, agricultural output valued at approximately 50 million credits annually. Strategic value, minimal. It would take 80 years to recoup the cost of invasion. I felt my exoskeleton tingle with understanding. "You have made conquest economically unfeasible." "Exactly. And that's just one colony. The network currently includes over 400 human settlements, each one designed to be more expensive to conquer than it's worth to own." Admiral Keth Prime leaned forward. But what happens when someone decides conquest is worth the cost? What happens when the Zarathi return with a fleet large enough to simply obliterate everything? Marcus smiled, and for the first time since I'd known him, it wasn't a pleasant expression. That's where Phase 6 comes in. Phase 6. Of course there was a Phase 6. Computer. Display Network Response Protocol Omega. The holographic display shifted to show something that made my breathing slits constrict with terror. It was a star map showing the positions of every major military installation, every fleet depot, every strategic resource in Zarathi space. Mr. Kane, I said slowly, how did you obtain classified Zarathi military intelligence? I didn't, the network did. Marcus highlighted a series of data streams flowing between human colonies and destinations throughout the galaxy. Remember, Zara, every colony in the network is connected to every other colony. And colonies trade with everyone. Human merchant ships visit Zarathi ports, Kalayan stations, Vorthan commercial hubs. They carry legitimate cargo, conduct normal business, and observe everything. You have turned the entire human civilian population into an intelligence network, not just human. Look closer. I examined the data streams more carefully and felt my world shift. The intelligence wasn't just flowing from human sources. Alien merchants, trading partners, even diplomatic contacts were contributing information to the network. How many species are participating? 47. At last count, turns out a lot of civilizations are interested in a defense model that doesn't require massive military expenditures. This is a fundamental restructuring of galactic civilization, Admiral Kethprime said, his voice hollow. Yes, it is. And the best part? It's completely voluntary. No one's being forced to join. No one's being conquered or converted. Species are choosing to participate because the network offers something traditional military alliances don't. Genuine security without the cost of maintaining standing armies. Marcus activated another display, showing economic data that made my tertiary nervous system start firing random impulses. Military spending across network member species is down an average of 60%. Those resources are being redirected to infrastructure, education, medical research, and technological development. Meanwhile, security has increased dramatically because potential aggressors know that attacking any network member means facing coordinated resistance from 47 different species. But surely the traditional military powers won't tolerate this disruption. I protested. Won't they? Marcus brought up news feeds from across the galaxy. The Hegemony Council is reporting a 70% reduction in territorial disputes. The Zarathi Crimson Fleet hasn't launched a single raid since New Geneva. Even the Kalayan Empire is requesting information about network membership protocols. Why? Because, Zora, the network doesn't just defend against external threats. It eliminates the economic incentives that create those threats in the first place. Marcus highlighted a series of trade agreements, resource-sharing protocols, and technological exchanges between network members. When every species has access to the resources they need through voluntary trade, when conflicts are resolved through economic cooperation rather than military force, when the cost of aggression exceeds any possible benefit, why would anyone choose war? I stared at the displays, feeling everything I'd believed about military doctrine crumble around me. Marcus Kane hadn't just failed our tests, he'd proved that our entire approach to galactic security was fundamentally flawed. Sir, I said to Admiral Kethprime, what does this mean for institutions like the Academy? It means we are obsolete, he replied grimly. Why train professional soldiers when civilian militias are more effective? Why maintain expensive fleets when distributed defense networks are more secure? Why study traditional tactics when the enemy has changed the rules of engagement entirely? Actually, Marcus interjected, you are not obsolete. You are just going to have to learn new subjects, such as logistics coordination, economic analysis, diplomatic negotiation, cultural integration. The network needs people who understand how to manage complex voluntary cooperation between dozens of different species. Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at the empty parade grounds where cadets used to drill. The old model of military education was about creating warriors who could impose order through force. The new model is about creating coordinators who can maintain peace through cooperation. And you think we can make this transition? Admiral Cuth Prime asked. I know you can, because you have already started. Marcus activated one final holographic display, showing personnel records from across the Academy. 60% of your current faculty have submitted applications to Network Coordination Academy. They want to learn how to teach the new model. They want to be part of building something better than what we had before. What about the other 40%? They will come around. Eventually, because the alternative is irrelevance. I felt a strange emotion building in my chest cavity. Not fear or anger, but something I hadn't experienced since my early days as an analyst. Excitement. Marcus, I said, what role do you see for someone like me in this new system? That depends. Are you interested in analyzing how 47 different species coordinate defense strategies? Or would you prefer to study the psychological factors that make voluntary cooperation more effective than coercive authority? Both, I said without hesitation. Then welcome to the network. Zara 14. As we prepared to leave the empty academy, Admiral Cuth Prime asked the question I'd been wondering about for months. Marcus, was any of this real? Your failures, your incompetence, your bumbling mistakes? Marcus paused at the doorway, looking back at the institution that had trained warriors for centuries. Admiral, every failure taught me something about your system that I couldn't have learned any other way. Every mistake revealed assumptions you didn't know you were making. Every test I failed showed me how to design better tests. So it was all calculated. Not calculated. Experimental. I had theories about how to create better defense systems, but I needed to understand existing systems first. The Academy was my laboratory, and we were your test subjects. No, Admiral, you were my teachers. And now, if you are willing, I'd like to return the favor. 6 months later, I found myself standing in the same conference room, but everything had changed. The Academy had been converted to the first Interspecies Coordination Institute, training diplomats, economists, and systems analysts instead of warriors. Admiral Cuth Prime, now Director Cuth Prime, was briefing our latest class of students on network integration protocols. The students represented 23 different species, all learning how to maintain peace through cooperation rather than enforce order through strength. Computer, I said during a break between lectures, current status of galactic conflict levels. Working, armed conflicts down 87% from pre-network baseline, economic disputes down 92%, territorial disagreements down 95%, and network membership? Working, current membership, 61 species. 12 additional species have submitted preliminary applications. I smiled, feeling a satisfaction I'd never experienced during my years analyzing combat scenarios. The galaxy was becoming a safer place, not because we'd built bigger weapons or stronger armies, but because we'd made war economically impossible and cooperation economically attractive. Zara, 14. Marcus's voice came from behind me. How are you adapting to the new curriculum? It's fascinating, I admitted. Analyzing cooperative systems is much more complex than analyzing competitive ones. There are so many variables, so many species-specific factors to consider, but more rewarding? Definitely. When I analyzed battles, the best outcome was that fewer beings died. Now I'm analyzing systems that prevent battles from happening in the first place. Marcus nodded, looking out the window at the training grounds where alien cadets were learning resource management instead of weapon deployment. You know, Zara, I never thanked you properly for your role in all this. My role? I was just an observer. You were the one who figured out what I was really doing. You could have exposed me at any time, but you chose to watch and learn instead. That made all the difference. I was curious about your pattern of failures, and your curiosity helped me refine my approach. Every question you asked, every analysis you ran, every report you filed contributed to the final design of the network. I felt a warm sensation in my tertiary nervous system. So I was part of the experiment too. You were part of the solution. The network works because beings like you are willing to question assumptions, analyze new data, and adapt to better methods. As we watched alien students learning to solve conflicts through negotiation rather than force, I realized that Marcus Kane had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic history. He hadn't just created a new defense system, he'd created a new form of civilization. Marcus, I said, what's your next project? Actually, Zara, I was hoping you'd help me design it. What did you have in mind? Marcus activated a holographic display showing star charts of unexplored space beyond the galaxy's edge. The network has solved the problem of conflict within known space. But what happens when we encounter truly alien civilizations? Species with completely different concepts of cooperation, competition, and survival. I stared at the display, feeling my analytical mind already starting to process the implications. You want to design first contact protocols. I want to design systems that turn first contact into an opportunity for mutual benefit rather than mutual destruction. It's incredibly complex. Yes, it is, but you know what? I think we are going to fail spectacularly at first. I looked at him in surprise. And that's exactly how we will learn to do it right. As I watched Marcus Kane smile, that same mischievous grin he'd worn while crashing fighter ships and missing every target in basic marksmanship, I realized something profound. He hadn't failed every test at the Academy. He had redesigned the entire concept of what it meant to pass. And now, as the galaxy settled into an unprecedented era of peace and cooperation, I understood that Marcus Kane's greatest lesson wasn't about military tactics or defense strategies. It was about the courage to fail at the wrong test so you could succeed at the right one. Computer, I said, smiling despite myself, begin analysis of intergalactic contact scenarios. Assume all initial approaches will fail spectacularly. Working. Analysis parameters established. Shall I include variables for human unpredictability? Definitely. And Zara 14 curiosity factors. And Marcus Kane impossibility coefficients? Most importantly, though, as the Academy's transformation continued around us, I realized that Marcus Kane had taught us the most valuable lesson any civilization could learn. That the greatest victories come not from defeating your enemies but from making it impossible for anyone to be your enemy in the first place. And if that wasn't worth failing a few tests for, nothing was.